My husband called it business expenses for 3 years. Every time I asked about the withdrawals, the ones that didn't match any invoice, any vendor, any project I could identify, he had an answer ready. Client entertainment. Equipment deposit. A contractor who preferred cash. He was never flustered when I asked. He had an answer for everything. What he did not have was receipts. And I, after 3 years of accepting answers without documentation, finally asked for them. My name is Diana Reeves. I am 42 years old. I am a forensic accountant. I have spent 16 years finding money that people have tried to make disappear. I am very good at it. My husband was good at hiding money. He was not good enough. Drop your city in the comments right now. Tell me what time it is where you are, and stay with me until the end, because what my accountant found in 4 hours changed every assumption my husband had made about how this was going to end. My husband, Marcus Reeves, ran a mid-sized landscaping company he had built over 15 years. He was genuinely talented at the work. He understood plants, soil, drainage, the patience required to build something living rather than just install it. The company had grown steadily, and by the time we married 11 years ago, it employed 22 people and served several hundred residential and commercial clients. I was proud of what he had built. I told him so regularly. What I had not fully understood in the early years was that Marcus had developed a habit of treating the company's finances and our household finances as interchangeable in ways that were convenient for him and opaque to me. I was not harder to deceive. I was simply slower to apply professional skepticism to a person I trusted. I want to be honest about this because I think it matters. People assume that professionals in financial investigation are immune to financial deception in their personal lives. This is not true. The skills that make you effective at finding financial irregularities professionally are the same skills that, in a personal context, you override in the name of trust. In my professional life, I verify. I cross-reference. I ask for documentation before I accept any number as accurate. In my personal life, I had been operating on faith, the reasonable, earned faith of a person who had been in a relationship for years and had no specific reason to believe that faith was misplaced. Marcus had given me no specific reason. He had been careful about that. What he had given me was 3 years of small inconsistencies that I had chosen to interpret charitably. By the time I stopped making that decision, $340,000 had moved. Here's what I noticed, over 3 years of noticing without fully acting on what I noticed. The company's stated revenue had been relatively flat for 4 years, despite the fact that Marcus had added 3 new commercial accounts. The expense reports included line items that were substantial but vague. Cash withdrawals appeared regularly, and amounts below the threshold that would require additional documentation. I am a forensic accountant. I know what structured cash withdrawals look like. I know what vague expense categories conceal. The evening I finally stopped telling myself the picture was fine was a Thursday in March. Marcus had shown me a quote for new equipment. After he went upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table looking at it, not because the quote was suspicious, because I realized I had been looking at documents Marcus showed me and accepting what they showed. And I had not once looked at documents he had not shown me. I called Patrick the next morning. Patrick Kwong is a colleague, a forensic accountant who specializes in business financial investigations. I told him I needed him to look at a company's books. I told him the company was my husband's. I had legal access to the company's records as a spouse and co-signer on several of the company's financing arrangements, a fact Marcus had not considered carefully when he had asked me to sign those documents 3 years earlier. Patrick called me on a Tuesday afternoon. He had started on Friday. I want to tell you about those 4 days, because they were some of the more uncomfortable days I have experienced professionally. Not because I was afraid of what Patrick would find. Because I was sitting with the specific discomfort of a person who has finally decided to look at something they have been choosing not to look at and is waiting for confirmation of what they already suspect. I went to work those 4 days. I took client meetings. I reviewed financial records for cases that had nothing to do with my husband. I held it the way I hold information professionally, close, complete, and without display. When Patrick called on Tuesday afternoon, I was in my office between appointments. I closed the door. He said, "Diana, I found $340,000. $340,000 across 3 years, structured to stay below documentation thresholds, routed through 3 different expense categories. The documentation for these expenses, when Patrick cross-referenced them against vendor records and client files, was either missing or inconsistent. My attorney, when I brought her Patrick's report, read it carefully. Then she set it down and looked at me. She said, "Your husband's accountant missed this." I said, "My husband's accountant was not looking for it." She said, "You were." I said, "Eventually, we filed before Marcus knew Patrick had completed his report." Marcus's response when he reviewed the disclosure had been to call his attorney immediately and ask whether there was any flexibility in the timeline. There was not. The proceedings took 7 months. Marcus's initial position that the business expenses were legitimate and Patrick's analysis had mischaracterized routine transactions did not survive the forensic review the court ordered. The court-appointed forensic accountant reached conclusions consistent with Patrick's findings. $340,000. The judge found it interesting. Marcus retained the company, as I had expected. It was his creation. He had built it from nothing, and whatever had happened in the financial layer of our marriage, the company itself was real and had been built through genuine work. I did not want to take it. I wanted what was owed. His attorney, in our final meeting, said to my attorney, "Your client's forensic team was unusually thorough." My attorney looked at me. I said, "She's unusually thorough." 16 years of professional practice, 4 hours of analysis, $340,000 that the judge found interesting. I still work as a forensic accountant. I am, if anything, more thorough than I was before, and I no longer accept answers without documentation, not from clients, not from anyone. I do not regret the faith. I regret waiting 3 years to verify it. Now I want to hear from you. If the numbers in your life had stopped adding up, if the answers were always ready but the receipts were never there, how long would you have waited before you called someone like Patrick? Tell me in the comments. And tell me the city you are watching from. I want to see how far Diana's story has traveled. Subscribe before you go. More stories are coming that you will not want to miss.